Hello and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today we've got a bit of a special one for you. Obviously, this is primarily a cinematography podcast, but like I said at the beginning of this season, I was going to attempt to take some opportunities to talk to other departments that interested me. So production design obviously has been an obvious one because production design and cinematography go so hand in glove oftentimes. And next week, we're talking to another production designer. But this week, we've got Lucinda Wright, who is the costume designer for The Witcher Season 3. And I know absolutely nothing about costuming, so I thought it would be fun to talk to someone who, you know, is very well outside of my wheelhouse and potentially learn something. And I feel like we did. We certainly had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. She also did season 1 of Doctor Who, which I was very excited to talk to her about because I love Doctor Who. And also, her husband's a DP, so she knows more about our collective stuff than I do. So this is a very sort of interviewee kind of interview versus more of a conversation like we'd like to have. But plenty conversational. At one point, she kind of starts interviewing me. So... just a real fun podcast this week, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So I will let you get to enjoying it. Here is my conversation with Lucinda Wright. The way that usually we start the podcast is by asking how you got your creative juices flowing. Were you, for you, did it start with just liking fashion and that got you into costuming, or like what transferred you into the film world?
What got me into the film world is that my dad was an artist and he had a great passion for film. So from a very early age, we used to watch film and just how things were made and lots of black and white movies. And we used to play a game where guess the color of the costume, and it was actually about camera work and things like that. And when I went to college to do a degree, there were no costume courses apart from a theatre place. So I thought if I trained as a fashion designer, I'd know how to do contemporary and cut and make. But I also, in my course, while everyone was studying bridal dresses, I studied armour and kind of really it. And they were like, why are you here? But I thought you might as well just have a go at it. So I was always intending to go into film from a very early age. And it's just how to get in there, really.
Were there any films that were kind of seminal for you? Any like ones that stand out as like, oh, that's my cup of tea there?
Oh gosh, there were so many films. I mean, I know everyone probably costume always says The Wizard of Oz, but that really was fantastic. But a lot of the there was a film 1933 Gold Diggers, and all these kind of Buzzley Barkley, for all the films that had that real, where they'd worked out the dance routines and the flow of the costume and all the Astaire and Ginger Rogers, all those films I was brought up on. And even right through to one of my favourite films is Goodfellas. And that's purely because of the opening shot and the way they go all the way through. And just films like that, and Citizen Kane, all the established ones really that you probably hear 1,000 times in reprise.
A lot of the DPs across the board, I'll say like Star Wars and, we got a couple like Matrixes, but it's always like the action fantasy films that I think draw people in the most, at least on this side.
I was going to say I was on The Witcher to work with Romain, our DOP. He was absolutely fantastic. And I used to keep saying to him, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't even see the costumes. So he was just the best.
Yeah. So you said before we started recording that your husband was a DP.
Yeah, he was the focus puller, and then he made it up into a DOP. But when we changed from film and went into tape, he kind of lost the love of it. So, cameras has always been a passion of mine.
Yeah, I can see how tape would, if we went straight from film to like today's digital cameras, I'm sure the transition would have been easier. But the
Mm.
tape era was certainly
No, it
tough.
killed. It killed, and for costume, it was really important because with film, everything was softer and like furs and leathers, and then when tape came in, it was like, oh, you had to really reevaluate what you were going to put in front of that camera because it was. I thought it was brutal myself at
Yeah.
first. Then you
Was
kind of get used to it.
was it just because of that kind of hyper sharpness? Like costumes were
Mm.
just really starting to ping off, or
Yeah, yeah, and it was just it was a big shock, I thought, for me, but you kind of acclimatise to these things and think, right. Yeah. But I'm pleased that I did work on film because it was a lovely medium.
yeah. I hold on. Let's. Aaron showed up. Something that I love about living in Los Angeles, and I'm sure this happens in other cities, but you'll go to the theater and they have costume displays out in the lobby, so you can see various films,
Oh, wow.
ostensibly the real costume. And it's always been fun to kind of get up close and see, like, oh, there's, like, I remember they had one for the new James Bond film. They had James's suit, one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see the little stunt pick points.
Yeah.
It was clearly a stunt suit, and there was like the holes there, and like just saying. But something that's always fascinated me is the texture of costumes, because I don't think in normal life, I feel like all of our clothes are so slick, and then you get to film and everything has some kind of texture on it.
Yeah, I mean that's the important thing in costume for breakdown is that I always like to have all the costumes. It's a bit of a running joke with my team that I never ever like anything washed. And it's like, I don't want any soap powder on that truck from day one. And everything has to be so grimy. And because that's what needs to be picked up on the camera. And so I have a great breakdown team, and it's so important to get that right for me. So, because it's got to be realistic. And I really can't bear that look. Like, it's just, as I call it, like they've just walked out the wardrobe department, they've practically got the
Yeah.
coat it's the suit is so clean, and it's not a good look if you're doing something that is fantasy or historical, needs to look grimy. So yeah, you do that. I use a lot of leather on The Witcher, which I love. It's a brilliant fabric. Great thing to use.
Yeah. Are there sort of fabrics that this podcast is ostensibly educational to a degree, and I think anyone listening who's maybe in a student zone or indie would love some advice on, like, are there some fabrics that are more, I guess, cinematic than others? Like, are there certain fabrics or certain textures that you're like, that does not go in a show, kind of across the board?
I think I like using linen, but you've got to be quite strong on your opinion because it will instantly look like you've been run over. But if that's the look you want, something lived in, I think linen's fantastic. Um, like I say, leathers and satins, you've got to be careful. It really is dictated by what the character is,
Mm.
what you want to have the light bounce off. Like in The Witcher with Geralt's armor, it was really important to get that molded leather with those studs and get that light bouncing off of it. So yeah, I think you just follow the script really and see what the character should have.
There's something I tend to jump around a lot, but something that I think kind of gets forgotten about a lot is the importance of silhouette. And Geralt has an amazing like, you can see, it's him the second he walks into a frame. You're like, there he is. How important is that to you? And do you try to build that with every character you have, or is it more just like certain heroes kind of, I don't know,
It's
need that?
For me, every single character has to have their own personal silhouette, especially if you've got so many characters, and their color palette. That you need to know who they are because on many scenes, there's so many people rushing past you, like, whoa. And with Geralt, with Henry and his physique, it's literally just to show off his physique. And he's got amazing shoulders and he works at it. And it was just to make that new armor I did for season 2 a second skin. But yeah, every single character should have their silhouette, so you know. And really, when you first see a character on film, that should tell you what the character is, not unless you're doing like a double bluff. But that, without them even speaking, you should be able to sum up who they are, I think, in contemporary and in historical or fantasy.
Yeah, a couple of the production designers I've talked to have really espoused the importance of like the place that someone lives or the place that is that character's place should in all ways reflect that character, which is such an obvious thing to think about. But I think it's easy to forget, like, oh, yeah, every, cup, every light is there for a reason. It's not just like to look cool.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to work with, as I said, Romain about how he was going to light it and the sets with Andrew and with makeup. It's so important to make that character look like they belong there. So it does, it all matches in, and it's not like they've just wandered off the street into a set. It should just, all the colours and textures should work together as a team.
Yeah, so talk to me more about your interaction with the cinematographer, because I feel like it's not, in my imagination, it doesn't seem like you two would talk a lot, but it sounds like those conversations actually happen all the time.
Well, it was quite funny because when I didn't do season 1, so when I started season 2 and I started my prep, he was the first person I went looking for, the DOP. And I went into the office and I said, oh, where? And they were like, oh, he's over there. And it was really funny because he said, oh, I want to come and see you about what the costumes, because he was new to it too. And from day one, we literally would talk endlessly. I mean, yeah, I love cameras anyway, but endlessly about costume and how it was being lit. And he was so clever that if I said, I think this outfit, could you help, or can we reflect that? And that's why he was a dream to work with. You don't often get that. There's not many people on other productions. That's not the first person I would go to. But because of the Witcher world, where it is dark, I just wanted to make sure and work with Andrew, the set designer, production designer, that we got the whole look right, because season 1 was very fantasy, but I think for season 2 we went into a darkness, especially after COVID. When the scripts came back, it went into a real dark. So I wanted to make sure we were all working together on that.
Yeah. Are there, what, again, jumping around everywhere, what about cinematography excites you, besides obviously the proximity to your husband?
That don't go out. I just love going to the cinema, and I just love that moment where you think, oh, we're going to watch this. I think it's always that element, are you going to be surprised? Do you know that's coming? And I also like to go and see a film where I don't think about the costume. I just want to enjoy the whole thing. I think when you start looking at the costume for myself, you're like, oh, it's lost me. But it's just seeing how other people approach these ideas, and you think, well, would I have thought of that? So it's challenging, but it's also entertaining. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Are there any films where the cinematography really stands out to you and like kind of you could point to as being like maybe some more DPs should watch these films?
Well, I think I'm going to say a very obvious one, but the original Blade Runner was
sure.
And I remember I was filming up north in England, and we were doing this night shoot, and I suddenly looked across, and there was this amazing power station, and this was like in the 90s. And I looked across, and I thought, Jesus, it's like Blade Runner. And then I actually found out that Ridley Scott and his brother were born there. It was where they were born, and I thought, I wondered if he ever looked out across there, because it just looked like it. It was stunning. And I always think that Blade Runner, but there are so many films to choose. That's the first one I think of.
I think that's the first one a lot of DPs think of. That film had so much amazing atmosphere and costumes, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think that film definitely has the, yeah, like I said, the atmosphere. Because even, sometimes I watch that film and I'm like, I'm starting to get bored. But maybe the pacing's a little weird, but like you can't beat the world building in that film.
But it's so clever because all the costumes are back to the 40s. Yeah, it's a
Right.
futuristic. I always think you go backwards. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this before. You go backwards if you want to do futuristic because
Oh,
people have to identify with the clothes. Because if you start doing the old silver foil, you've lost it, I always think.
right. No, that actually makes total sense. I hadn't thought about that. Like if you want to make something super futuristic, it comes off as cheesy if you don't ground it in
Mm,
something here.
yeah, yeah.
I was looking at your IMDb and I was excited because you actually worked on a show that some people might be surprised is one of my favorite shows. But you did the first season of Doctor Who, the reboot.
Yeah, and that was five of us sat in a room, say, and we watched the old Doctor Who's of like the 80s, when it really lost the plot. And
Yeah.
we were sitting there going, and I remember people saying, because I'd done a really serious political drama before, and then they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, the reboot Doctor Who." And people were like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
And and I went, "Yeah," because I treated every episode like a drama. And it was so exciting to sit with Russell and Phil. And we just sat there. And of course, we didn't realize it was going to be so popular. But it was so exciting to do it because in those days it was just me and makeup, no prosthetics. We kind of did it together. And I mean, it was a long time ago now, about 20 years or whatever. But it's nice to hear that it's one of your favorite programs, but it was exciting to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually the thing that me and my girlfriend first met on. We met on one of those apps, and
Oh,
her little thingy was like, I can't remember, but she said she liked Doctor Who. I was like, ooh, me too. And then
oh, that's really sweet. That's
and that was
really
like
sweet.
4 years ago.
Oh my God.
It's funny. I told her I was like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to the costume designer from the first season, and just without skipping a beat, she goes, "I love Rose's giant pants."
Yeah, because the weird thing about Rose, she had to start from somewhere like an ordinary girl, and then she got more and more superhero. And Billy did get more and more slimmer, actually, and more refined and physical. But I remember on the very first day of filming that, we were in a disused hospital, and Chris Eccleston was chasing a pig in a spacesuit down the corridor. And after the
Right.
take, I went, "I've made it. I've made it to Doctor Who. This is what it's like. I'm chasing a pig in a Russian spacesuit." And yeah, we all just laughed. But yeah, we didn't know it was going to be so big. But it was brilliant to work on. I loved it. Really loved it.
I was wondering because like yeah when the reboot happened, no one was
Interesting.
necessarily looking forward. Yeah. So did that lower the stress level, or were you able to kind of go into that and take risks and do your own thing, or did the weight of what was formerly a very formative show for people kind of still hit you?
Well, it was great because Russell gave me a lot. The writer Russell T Davis gave me a lot of freedom. Like I would do like a portfolio for each episode, and like one episode we had like it said a queen and her two aides in white cloaks, and I said, well, let's make her a tree queen, and I just got all the stuff in. I wanted like samurai. Let's make them bodyguards, and he just let me kind of do what I wanted to do, which was very brave of him, really. And I mean, it was quite stressful for a year. At one point, you had like four directors, and they would like, you were doing so many episodes at the same time. And as a designer, I usually start not on episode one. If something huge is coming up in episode four, I start my prep on that so that by the
Mhm.
time you start running into it. But we were allowed to do a lot of things because no one really was that interested, to be honest. And they were like, oh, it's going to be the creaky old wobbly walls and people in foam and Christ knows what. But
Right.
it's like a pig. I based that on like a 1950s spacesuit, you know, and there was trying to make it look. I try to treat it with as much respect as a film and a drama to make it believable, and not just treat it like as a kids program, which it kind of dissolved into in the 80s. Right. And I apologize if I offend anyone out there, but it, you know, it did.
I think they agree.
Yeah.
You know, what was speaking of leather, what was the kind of decision to make Eccleston, his you know, very undoctory to just be in a leather, you know, not a biker jacket, but yeah.
The thing with that is it's all about the person who plays it and the character. And when I met Chris, I thought, well, yeah, you're Northern, and he had a strange silhouette. And the Doctor Who's before have been very fanciful, very colourful, almost like like a comedy. So I wanted, the thing about Chris is very Northern and realistic and gritty. So I thought, well, let's keep it basic, you know. And I did, and this is a bit of a confession, I did make him a leather coat. And we were doing the run-up, and about 4 days before filming, I kept looking at this coat and I tried it on him, and something I'll never do again. I looked at it and I whipped it off and I went, no, that ain't going to work. Now, that isn't what you do to an actor just before a big shoot.
Oh,
and
sure.
He just stared at me and literally went white. And I said, no, we've got to start again. He said, we've got 4 days. So I started again, and I actually found it was a World War II naval jacket. It was German, I think, actually. And it was because he's meant to be 900 years old. And it was just a very, very battered jacket I found. And I said, that's what you're going to use. And then we tried it on, and then it all made sense. But there's a tip. Don't ever do that to your lead man. I'll never do that again. It was horrific. He was just like dissolved. Bless him.
You know, that does bring up a good... you didn't design the Cybermen and stuff, right?
No, they were from way back in the like this and that.
Because they kept getting updated, but maybe that was just more in the recent one. But you bring up a good point about how costume informs character. You know, I've heard like one anecdote was that like, you know, what's his name? Tarantino will put like receipts in the pockets from like where this character got their breakfast coffee or what, you know. And I'm wondering, kind of, do the conversations between you and the how much conversation is happening between you and the actors? Like, are they telling you what their character wants, or are you kind of informing them, or what's the sort of symbiotic relationship there?
Well, on most programs or most films, you know, you meet them, and I'm always looking at them, and I ask them, what do they think the character is? Because 99% of it is how they're going to walk in it, how they're going to portray. And I always say, like, I can tell on camera, if you don't like this costume, it's in your eyes. And I'm not gonna chase you around a truck in the morning saying wear it, because you're not going to wear it. So it has to come from them. And I, especially on The Witcher or joining it, I kept saying to them, what's the character? What do you do? What thing? So for me, if I can get as much out of them as possible, then you kind of work with them, and you will get the best out of them because they feel part of it. I mean, that is how it should work. Sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes, if I'm honest, some actors only see themselves. I mean, I've put my head on the line here, but they won't get past that character, and that's when you have to kind of keep saying, "This is the character." So it's a kind of working relationship, you know, and usually it works really well because they're playing the part. As I say to them, "You're wearing it, not me." So you've got to be comfortable in it, really.
Yeah, that brings up a good point, like the sort of vanity of an actor, you know, whoever. I could see how that could often get in the way of them wanting, you know, especially if they're supposed to play an unattractive character. You're like, all right, here's your burlap sack, and they're like, but I don't, I don't want to.
It very rarely happens because they've accepted the role, they understand it. But I won't lie, it can creep in, but you have to kind of quickly stamp on that one if you're lucky. But then you've also got to understand there's a line there's a line I find in a fitting when you know you're not going to win, and you just think, well, do you know what? I'll just have to go with it. You've got to be realistic, you know. It's not life and death. It's like, okay, if they want to be like that, fine. And you just have to trust, you know, you're not going to force them into it. So,
Yeah.
and,
Well, you experience that as like a DP and especially like a colorist, like certain actors, the way it was described to me is you need to do your friend a favor. You know,
yeah,
sometimes you
that's a good
even them out a
description.
little bit, you know,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
you need to do them a little bit of a favor. So I can imagine that that extends to costuming
yeah.
and especially makeup.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point and a good way of phrasing it. Yeah.
Let's see, what else I have. Oh no, it was in my head. Where did it go? Wasn't that? I have notes. Oh, you know, production can be really stressful, obviously. But having seen like behind the scenes footage of props being built or costuming rooms or anything, that seems like a wonderfully like collaborative, probably still stressful, but like a collaborative sort of that seems like the most fun to me, the actual building of the, you know, costumes and props and whatever in question. Is that the case, or is that all just still nightmare, just
Oh
like production?
no, it's amazing. I mean, I'm at work now, and we're just making this outfit, and you can literally just go and choose those fabrics, and then you talk through it. And I've just been in the workroom, and I've just seen another outfit being made, and I've been doing this a long time, and I still get that immense thrill of, oh my god, you know, it's exciting. You can just, if you're given that license to do certain things, and it's just brilliant. And then we've just been filming a really big scene for about a month, and they're all in one really special outfit. All the extras, it's all been made. It's massive, and it's just a thrill to see. And it's like on season 2, every time I put Henry into that armor, every day I was like, geez, you know, it doesn't get much better than this. I mean, I mean, I know I'm talking about my own work, but he wore it so well. I mean,
Sure.
God, yeah.
Uh, he's you know, not bad to look at. How many costumes are you making? Like per, I'm sure like extras are only getting, you know, 1 or 2, but like how many costumes are you making per character that all need to match?
Well, on season 2, Henry had 8 sets of armor for the stages of breakdown and for stunts. So it was 8.
Mm.
There were like little pods of him all up the truck. All the characters in The Witcher have stunt doubles, because we quite often do the end of the fight and the loads of blood, loads of monsters. I was asked this the other day, and I should actually think about it. There are hundreds. There are hundreds, like with the Nilfgaard armor. We had 60 made for season 2, and with Kahir Eamon, who plays the winged helmet soldier. I mean, there are loads, but they're just brilliant to be able to be allowed to do it and go into that different world. So there are, I might even say 1,000. There are loads.
Yeah. Yeah, I just imagine like I've said this before on this podcast, but like I'm a DP, but I realized very late in life, probably when I was like 27, that I should have gotten into props or
Really?
visual effects. Because I like working with my hands. I like building things. I like
You've answered it there. So why didn't you do that?
I didn't know it was an option, which is funny because a lot of people don't think that even being a DP is really an option or working in
No.
film in general. But yeah, in film school, it was like, you know, you had to pick a job and it was like, you know, director, writer, editor, DP.
Oh, well, that's a
And
bit.
so,
Well, come on, be a DOP. That's pretty good.
oh no, I love it. It's definitely, and it's like the only, you know, it's the only thing going on in my head all the time. But it's been positive in that I don't take things super personally if someone doesn't like my cinematography work, because it's not my first passion, right? It's like my second. So
Oh, that
that helps.
So now I ask you, what is one of your favourite films then?
So this will be a retread for anyone who listens a lot, but The Matrix was really big for me growing up.
Really? Why?
For that, well, it was just the fantasy of the whole thing, and that film is tailor made for a teenage boy. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of guns, everyone's got cool leather jackets and stuff.
Yeah.
The music, but the production design, especially like the Nebuchadnezzar, looks really, really cool, and all that techno stuff was just, and obviously the effects, and that's great cinematography in that one too. Fight Club was one. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
The original?
The
original?
Yeah, that one was big for me.
Wilder. I should hope so, the original.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
And it's all kind of, Star Wars, obviously. And that was the thing that, like, I figured out, again, late in life, was it was cooler to make the lightsaber than to film it. Like, so I found myself... Go ahead.
So do you do any props now?
Sometimes I, will build little things for myself, but I think that tinkering makes its way into other avenues, rigging up cameras, especially like, or I have a 3D printer, making stuff around the house. It's just that whatever that compulsion is to manipulate things, just kind of goes into everything else,
Oh, that's really interesting. That's really that's a really good view to be a DOP and prop making. That's that covering it all, isn't it? Really.
I suppose. I mean, it makes. I suppose it does make me more interested in the whole, because prop making and production design and costume design are all kind of related. And since I have an interest in that, like this is something that's probably not great, is I will nitpick, which is not my job, but that doesn't quite look, but I shouldn't be doing that because that's not my department.
No, I mean, that's important. It's like when I started working with Romain, he said, "Oh, show me the kind of colors," and we did camera tests and things, and you should really kind of thrash that out, because I can't think of anything worse than spending all your time doing costumes and then you hear a heart-rending scream from behind the camera. No, we don't want to go down that path. So you kind of thrash it out, really.
Yeah. Actually, jumping back to the Doctor Who thing, the lighting in that show was aggressive.
Oh yeah, and that was, God bless him, a real old timer, DOP, and he was very particular about how it was going to look. And it weren't shifting.
Yeah. I was talking to another DP who had worked on Doctor Who, but it was one of the slightly more recent seasons. And he was saying, like, having watched the reboot stuff, and he said, I think he knew the guy. I think he said something similar to that. Like, and especially having to do the tape, going back to the tape idea.
I remember I did shuffle up once and kind of politely said, "Is there any way?" And the look I got, I went, "No, it's okay, I won't bother." I just turned around and walked away. I thought, no, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to chance my arm. That's how it's going to look. Okay, I'll work. And I do remember changing quite a few things to make it work, because you can't always win. And you think, well, I've got to do something else quickly. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to, on the props thing, again, I jump around everywhere. I did want to give some of my friends credit. So an outlet I have is two of my friends now three of them work for Legacy Effects. So they're doing all of the, Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy. And
that must be fantastic.
I get to live and a friend of mine works for Prop Store of London. So I get to sort of vicariously live through them. And get the inside scoop. My friend Carrie made Baby Yoda's ears. That's a fun claim to fame.
Well, that is a claim to fame. And what I'm going to say to you, when you asked me about what films, and you said about costumes in the cinemas, one of my passions is I've always collected lobby cards and film posters. Sure. And I've got the Blade Runner, and I've got Yoda on the wall with his ears. And next time I see him, I'll give him a little tap. But yeah, that's great. Oh, I like that. That's a good
Yeah.
story.
I was asking, I was working for this Michelin star restaurant for a minute, shooting some stuff. And I was asking the bar manager, like, what is it about top tier food or top tier drinks programs? Like, who sets that tone? The same thing with fashion is like, who decides, those wacky runway shows that they do that no one's ever going to buy these clothes. Like, who decides that that's the high fashion? Is that just kind of in the ether, or what is that?
Well, I hope this is the right answer, but when I was doing fashion and I was pushing everything as much as I could at college, I suddenly realised that they do those theatrical things for the runway, and then by the time it hits the shops, it's so watered down. That's how I survived at college, because I'd push it as far as I could, and they were like, yeah, we can see that later on, died down a bit. But I think it's the way everyone can have an opinion, and everyone can take what they like from it. So you can go wild, or you could go for the watered down version. So it's a strange one, fashion. I mean, it comes around. I remember when I first started filming in the 80s, and I said, God, this period, it's contemporary, it's going to come back and haunt us. And, those power suits and that. At the time, I was like, yo. But I think it was the last distinctive look for fashion, I think. I mean, it's years ago now, but instantly when you're watching an 80s film, don't
Right.
you? It comes towards you costume wise. Yeah, very strong.
Is there, I'm sure this is the case, but has costuming changed sort of over the history of film? Obviously it has, but like, I suppose better question is, in what ways has costuming changed over the years? Have costumes become more elaborate? Because, I'll see like films from the 50s or something, and, like sword and sandal films, and they do look very, we got these from the Universal costume department. You saw these in 4 other films. There is no difference.
Well, that's an interesting question, because I was watching the other day, I watched Ivanhoe, which I watched as a kid, and I remember thinking, God damn it, it is so brilliant. I watched it and I was shocked. It was so just made. You could almost see the pins in it. It was so new. It was so comical in a way. George Sanders was wearing his outfit. I thought, how they got him in that, I do not know. It was just, Liz Taylor looked amazing, but she had a corset on from the 50s. And it's like, I just think you see it in different eyes. And I think, for me, I think costume is more, people will go for more like the realism now and make it dirty. You look back on those films, I mean, not every film. I mean, I was just thinking another favourite film of mine is Night of the Hunter. That's a good one. And but I think people are more, I don't know, they seem to be more braver, to make it look realistic and simple. But then each period had a different look. The 30s was to get away from the Depression. The 50s was that bright, and the Technicolor and all that came in. So I suppose each decade has that certain look.
Well, and it makes me think too, because like, if you watch older films, a lot of times there's stuff, maybe not a boom in the shot, but maybe there are pins in the costume because no one expected DVD. It was gonna go by in a second. There's plenty of shots in movies where you could tell the DP went, that's gonna be on screen for 1 second. Let's just get it out of here, and no one's gonna know. And then cut to 40 years later, we've got Blu-ray and we can pause it. Yeah,
and the continuity is shocking. I was watching something the other day, and I thought, oh my God, not only have they crossed the line, but they've kind of like, what, the other side of the room. And I thought, she's over there. And I thought, as you're right, they were banged out, those B movies. They were going to be seen at the cinema, and no one ever thought, oh, but they never even dreamt of it. But now when you watch it with different eyes, you're like, they really didn't give a damn about continuity of certain scenes. But if they worked, and they look great.
Yeah. That brings up a thought. Do you know Adam Savage from the Mythbusters?
No, I'm afraid not.
So he worked is very popular American show, educational show, but he's got his own YouTube channel now, and he worked in visual effects for ILM and worked on the first couple Star Warses, the new ones, like 1 through 3, and the new Matrixes, the first two, or the 2 and 3. But he's a big proponent of cosplay and making props and stuff. And he has speaking of Blade Runner, like all these Blade Runner blasters. And he was like, yeah, he went to the movie a bunch of times just to try to figure out how to make Deckard's pistol. And it was awful. Didn't look right at all. But then, VHS comes out and he can pause it and kind of. And I'm wondering, have you seen, because I've seen plenty of Witcher cosplay. Have you seen any that's kind of impressed you or anything like that you're stoked on?
I'll tell you something. I was very lucky. They took me, Andrew, and we went with Lauren, the showrunner, to the launch of Witcher 2 in Lucca at the Comic-Con last October. Now, I'd never been to a Comic-Con, and we walked into this lovely Italian village, and there was this massive queue. And I went, oh, what's that? And they went, oh, they're going to see you to talk, all the fans and that. And I was walking along with Kim, who played Vesemir in it, Kim from Killing Eve. And we were walking along, and I suddenly turned to look round, and there was a man dressed exactly in the costume that Kim had worn. And it was like, I was just like, and I suddenly looked around, and they were all dressed in the costumes, and it was the most weirdest thing in the world. And I thought, oh, bless them. They've really, really liked this. And I've had lots of emails and things about, what colour is this? What colour is that? I'm making that. And I always reply, because if they're going to put their heart and soul on it, God bless them. But it was a different world. I didn't know it existed. I really didn't.
There is entire replica prop forum is one, speaking specifically of props, but just for those who want like the ultimate in accuracy, good Lord, people are so specific. I mean, freeze framing things, just analyzing for days, I've seen people try to figure out what lens something was shot on to get the dimensions right. Because if a lens is too wide, the suit will look too big or whatever. So they'll like figure out, okay, so on, they shot the whole film on a 40 mil. Okay, so we can figure out the distortion on that. So we know that's not 2 feet wide. That's actually 1.5 feet or,
My God, that is serious.
It's such cosplay, especially and for something like The Witcher, where it's so, steeped in obviously the video game and fan culture and stuff. It's a really fun way to, I don't personally do it, but it's clearly a fun way to express how much you love something and you can't act in the world, but you can dress like it, that's becoming more acceptable is very, or accepted rather, is very cool, I think.
It's an interesting thing, because when I started it, I made a big thing about not looking at the game, not looking at anything and quite a few cast would turn up and they lurch towards me with some kind of artwork, and I'd go, no, and I refused. And I'd have meetings with Lauren, the showrunner, and I'd say, I'm not going to look at it, but it's by design anywhere near it. I didn't want to, because once you look at it, like yourself, once you've seen something, it burns into those retinas, and it's there. It's at the back of that head. So even now on Witcher 3, they say, we might, a director will come in and say, I've seen this in a game, and I'm like, no. And you're not being rude. You're just like, I don't want to repeat it on the screen. But it is interesting how passionate people are, as you say, to get it right for them.
Yeah. Are the I think I saw this somewhere, but maybe I was wrong when I was doing research. Does CD Projekt Red like own the costumes anyway? Like, would you guys have to get permission from the game studio to remake the costumes?
Well, that's why I wouldn't want to remake a look that's already done. That's why I avoided it. And I remember saying to someone, I'm not going to look at the game. And they went, yeah, all right. And that was the end of the conversation.
Easy for us. Yeah.
Yeah, they did come up and pat me on the back the other day, marketing, and because we were talking about marketing, and I said, "Oh look," someone said, "Oh, have you seen this?" And I went, "What is it?" And they kind of looked at me like, "Oh, poor girl, she don't go out much." I said, "Look, I don't watch the game. I'm not watching the game, you know." And they went, "Oh, that's," and they did say thank you, and I thought, "Well, that's nice." But now, after talking to you, I realised why they were saying thank you.
Yeah.
Copyright.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, and it's just such an enormous game that like,
Yeah.
who knows? And there's so many mods. Like if you were to do your own research, maybe you're finding some fan made thing that someone injected into the game and you're like, let's make this. And everyone goes, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, yeah. Someone did show me a picture the other day, and I went, "If you think I'm having that, no." Because in games and fantasy, you can just draw and make up anything. If you're going to put that on a human or a person, that's a different world.
A big part, which I'm sure you've ran into with Geralt, is models, game models. This happens. I've noticed this with cosplayers and prop makers and stuff. They can clip into their own what's called clipping. So like if the armor doesn't have to exist in reality, so it can move maybe like in here, let's say under the arm, it can just move straight through the character model. You know, they can because no one will ever see it.
Well, that's interesting because when I met Henry, who I worked really closely for the armor, he sat down and he spoke about the armor for season 1, and I went, okay, right, okay. And so the big thing was to make the armor so that Henry could put his hand behind his back and get his sword, and
Right.
that for me was a really big thing. And also for him to move and get in and out of it, and that's why I brought the buckles in, so he could be released, and it was like a second skin. And I remember we were doing one shot, I don't know, episode 6 or something, and then he said, "And I'll put my arm up and I'll get my sword," and they were like, "Yeah," and I was just like, if you knew how important that was to both of us, and we were just like, his arms up, and they were like, "Yeah, all right, don't get too excited, we're not going to do that shot." And I go, "No, you don't realise." Because before he couldn't do anything, and it was that was a good moment. But that sounds weird about the armor that they can move it around.
Well, it's just because in video games,
You can do whatever you like.
yeah, it doesn't. You know, he can go like this, and he could have 5 massive metal plates, you know, going down his arm, and it won't. Physics doesn't need to apply. You know, this is more important than whatever. But I could see, you know, because some people will like going back to cosplay, some people will get game models and 3D print them or whatever, and then they're wearing it and they're like, well, this doesn't work, you know. They're just locked into this position.
I do remember when we were filming it, a couple of my team came up, they had their phone and they went, "We're not sure if you're going to laugh or cry." And I went, "What is it?" And they showed me somewhere abroad, I think it was the cosplay, they'd made it already, the armor. And I just looked, no, let's put that away. We're not going to go there. But then I thought, oh, how sweet. Someone's actually tried to do it. But it's weird. I find it hard to think.
We'll just put your email and home phone number on the show notes. And my girlfriend, who I spoke about earlier, is actually a professional dancer, and she teaches dance and stuff like that. I went to school for it, and when I told her I was interviewing you, she mentioned something that I didn't even realize. She said when she was in college, they didn't have like a costuming workbook. There was no like textbooks or resources, so she had to make her own. There's a binder somewhere over here where she had to make her own costuming resource. I assume that must have been the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, because it was fashion, I know it sounds really naive, but I couldn't even sew when I got on this course. I mean, which whenever I was in the 3rd year and we'd have people coming to look around, I'd just pull them aside and say, just learn to sew because your life is going to be hell if you can't. Because I used to, it was the classic thing, used to do designs. And then they'd say, yeah, and how'd you get in it, Lucy? And I'm like, oh. So there was, we just do a drawing.
It's a game model problem, yeah.
There was a lot of that in the first year. Yeah, you just had to. It was a tough course because it was fashion design. 25 of us were on it, and each year they would cut us by half. And they said, only 10 of you will be in the third year, even though you got on the course for a degree. So it was brutal. But then I think that taught me a lot, because when you do start, there are moments in costume when people can really costume. I find always an easy target on a film set because everyone can have a view. And quite often, if an actor goes off on one about the costume, it's nothing to do about the costume. They just want to have a moan. And on a serious note, I think being at college, that taught me to have an inner core to kind of hopefully ride it out. Because if you're a DOP, they can't criticise your lenses or your light.
But they have the monitor now. Everyone's got the big 24-inch monitor. They're staring at it,
flicking those switches. I groan, but I think with costume, because you can dress someone on a trailer. By the time they've gone to the set past the sparks and that, someone just have to say, "Oh, you look a bit lardy," and or whatever, and that. And by the time the actors got to the set, they're like, "Get me out of here." Right. But yeah. You, as your girlfriend said, you just have to kind of get your own resources and work at it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, you said you're working on the third season now. Iteration is something that is so important to any artist. But I imagine that, once you're in the production, it's locked in. You can't iterate any further, but I'm sure you learn a lot. Is there anything going into this third season that you, not obviously, if you can't share stuff, that's fine, but like generalized, anything that you've sort of iterated about any of the costumes that, or maybe problems that you run into that you had to solve from the second season to the third season? Mobility or look or anything like that?
When you say problems, those are the kind of things you need to thrash out in the fitting, and hopefully when you've done the costume, there aren't those problems. Because if you've got a problem, then it's not going to work on camera. So, no, I can't think of anything that's reared its ugly head yet.
That's good.
We haven't finished yet, so famous last words. I'll walk out and there'll be a heart-rending scream from the set. But no, I think you always have to have that mindset that you can always change stuff and never be set in. It's like when you go on location or you go to a set, the first thing you do, when you've done your research, is like you've got to be willing as a costume designer to suddenly change something, or the director or the actor might go, do you know what, today, not feeling it. You've got to be able to move pretty quick and accept it, because things will change. They really will.
Yeah. And I remember in an interview you had done, you had mentioned oh, where are those elixirs coming from? And he was like, it's magic. And you're like, how about we put them on your boot?
I was like, poor old Henry, I grilled him, but I was like, where'd they come from? He said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, they got to come from somewhere. So he said, well, why don't I have something on my leg? And then we did that kind of bandit we made a holster. And that was great because he had so much going on top and he had the boots. It actually leveled it. So that we worked together on that. And then on this season, there's a different approach to the elixir because it's a different look, but I'm not going to say. But it is. Everything should be practical. He should be able to look like he can fight in that armor. You should know where those elixirs come from. Otherwise, why wear something that's not really armor? Really? Right. I think. Are there any sort of? This is the thing that kind of gets me excited about costumes and props and stuff. Is sort of. Maybe not witness marks, but anything is there anything in the costumes that you've kind of small touches that do not get camera time, but you're like, I put that there and that's for me? Oh, there is something. I did it the other day. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought no one's going to notice bar me. Oh, what was it? Oh, it was something. Oh, I can't think. Isn't that annoying? But I remember standing there on set going, That's my little joke. Oh, I'm going to have to get back to you at some point. It was really annoying, but I can't think what it was. Damn. But yeah, you do those things and you think no one's ever going to pick up on it. But as you say now with, DVDs and that, people watch stuff really closely, don't they? So you have to be careful. But,
well, and I'm sure that the cosplayers that are super into accuracy, if they get wind like, oh yeah, the costume designer put their signature on the inside of one panel, it's like, we got to get it and find it.
You're right.
You're obviously nominated for the Emmy for this show, well deserved. But
that is such a massive thing. I can't believe it. But thank you very much.
I mean, they're dope looking costumes. But I'm wondering, is there any shows or movies that you watched recently that you thought did an excellent job with the costuming that kind of impressed you or maybe inspired you a little bit?
I'm just trying to think. Unfortunately, when you are working on something like this, it's 24 hours and
sure.
27, and I'm trying to think. I can't think at the moment. I think when I finish,
just yours.
Yeah, and that sounds dreadful, doesn't it? Oh my God! But no, I'm just thinking. No, I can't think.
That's totally fair.
When I finish filming, I need to go out and back to the cinema.
Well, that is, we were just talking about that, me and another DP, whatever, it's going to come out of order for whoever's listening anyway. But we were talking about the importance of the break, like to work yourself, this is a job where you're going to be working in some cases 12-hour days, 14-hour days, whatever, for an extended period of time. And it's so easy to want to just jump to the next gig. But the break thing is so important, to refresh you, but also as part of flow state. The recovery period is crucial to getting back and doing your best work, or else, it's diminishing returns. You'll start to do worse work as you go forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really do. I mean, I've been very lucky that I've kind of gone from Witcher to a sequel to Witcher because I love it. I really do love it. But I do think I agree with you. You need to stop, even if it's for only a couple of weeks. You just need to get out of that bubble and get into the real world and then realize how lucky you are in that bubble and jump back in it. But I think, it's really important to take a break and have a breather and look at things differently. Because like you say, when you asked me, have I thought of any other films? And I suddenly thought, no, I've literally been doing this because of COVID, quite a few years, that continuous. Yeah. So it's very healthy. You should do.
Are there any non-film hobbies that you have that you enjoy?
I'm afraid to say, gosh, that's me. I remember years ago someone asked me that and I just looked at them like they had two heads. I went, what do you want about? They said, what do you do at the weekends? And I was like, I work. What do you do? What do you mean? I go and see films. What do you want about? But no, I just love this.
Yeah. Luckily, I've been a snowboarder my whole life, so I have like that in me where I need to get out in nature. Thank God it's nature. And I didn't get stuck in professional video gaming like I was as a kid.
Oh my God. Oh, snowboarding's great. That's great to do that. Yeah.
That's a big
freedom, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm sure you've experienced snow. It's that quiet, especially living in LA, the dichotomy between the quiet of the mountains and how noisy it is here is very important. Damn, I had more questions, but we're kind of coming up on time. I'll ask this because I did want to know, when you're designing groups of people, cultures or whatever, what kind of work is going into that, like sort of research or ideation or whatever? Like, how are you thinking about creating different groups, different cultures, different, are you drawing from reality? Or are you just trying to think of like one or two things that bind them together? How does that work for you?
Well, we were doing that today. We started one block, and it was meant to be the desert and everything. And we were dressing them, and we did go abroad, and I took loads of photos of the local crew with all their turbans and copied them. And we were setting it today, and they were dressing them, and they were like, I mean, it's very hot here anyway. And I was like, no, 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 no. And they were meant to be inside this kind of scruffy old trappers bar, and I was like, no, you've got to be open, it's meant to be hot, it's meant to be hot. And they said, yeah, we know it's hot. And then we know, I went in the story, and so all the colours, textures, and they had turbans on and all that. And then we went in on the set, and they'd lit it, and you would think you were in the desert. And I thought, yeah, that's why. And so I do a lot of research on things like that, you always follow the script. You always see what those worlds are. And because The Witcher has those different worlds, whether it's hot or it's cold, or you always have to push that in the costume, even though, I had someone dressed in furs and things like that the other day, and they were like, oh, but it's hot. And I'm saying, no. When you're on the set, it's getting into that world. I know it sounds very obvious, but it's really important to do those costumes to tell the story. And so, yeah, all the kind of looks are really worked out through the set design as well. That's really important to see what they're going to, like when we did Kaer Morgan, The Witcher's home in season 2, it was going to be very dark. It had to be very dark leathers and blacks. Well, only Henry's black, Geralt, but browns and textures. But then also when we had the sex workers came in, I wanted them to be like oriental and kind of bright colours, but all very worn out. So creating those worlds in that set, that's where you have to push all those different looks to make it look like a different world, if you know what I mean, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually that is kind of a part 2 of a question I asked earlier, but what are you doing to costumes to have them read on camera appreciably? Because like leather could be a very flat surface, it's are you texturing the leather in any way? Because with anything in film, you kind of have to do 115% to make it look like 95%,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of the fabrics, we dye up a lot of the fabrics. So I was just choosing a fabric a minute ago, and we do a lot of dyeing and a lot of breaking down. And like Henry's armor, when he had it, it was like he picked it up, and so it had like a claw mark, and you just really hammer it out so that it can be picked up. And I think it's, as we were talking earlier, making sure all costume these days, everything looks like it's lived in. I mean, you say The Matrix, but that was super shiny, but then that was it was just unique, wasn't it? And in fact, I was talking about a long leather coat the other day, and I turned around and I went, nah, The Matrix has done that. I can't do it. It's a certain look which still goes to the back of your head, and you think, that's been done. But yeah, it's just creating that world and things like that. Yeah.
Actually, that brings up an interesting point. I wouldn't call this sci-fi. The fantasy realm has had some really standout productions. Obviously your Lord of the Rings is the main one. Do you have to sort of mentally avoid looking like any of those productions, or does that not quite come into play? As the big leather coat is pretty specific, or giant red cape might be a little too obvious for something, if you're making a superhero film. But yeah, do you have to kind of like avoid other things, or do you borrow even from those ones?
I think I must be one of the only people who didn't watch Game of Thrones, and so many people. Oh God, so many people.
I interviewed the DP yesterday. We talked for 3 hours, and at the very end, I have to go, dude, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God, that's very brave of you. But so many.
We were friends by then. It was all right.
Oh, actually, but I mean, obviously, I've seen images, of those, but you try not to look too closely. Yeah, because someone the other day said, oh, I want a costume like this. And I went, it's from another program. And I just looked at them and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. It's done. So you really do have to veer away. You have to. As people go, oh, you've just done that from so-and-so. Whether it's intentional or not, you have to be really careful because they're so iconic, these looks from Game of Thrones and others and Star Wars. You just have to kind of get around it because you don't want to copy something. You don't want to. No, you don't want. That's not designing. And it might happen now and then, but purely by mistake, and then you have to change it quickly. Well, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's probably why you're nominated for awards, because it's you've got original thoughts coming out of you.
Lucky.
Go figure.
Very lucky. Very lucky.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on time, so I'll let you go here pretty quick. But I like to end each podcast with the same two questions. So the first one being, is there a piece of advice or a resource or something that you either read or received that has stuck with you over the years, that has helped you throughout your career?
A piece of advice, if I could give a piece of advice,
sure,
is don't ever give up. Just follow your dreams. Now, how corny does that sound? But you know what? Just keep at it. And when people knock you down or say, just keep going because you'll get there.
Yeah. And the second question, perhaps a little easier, or not. If you're programming a double feature, which I guess is hard for a television show, but if you're programming a double feature and The Witcher was one block, what do you make the second block?
God, that's a hard question. Oh my Lord, that is a hard one. I suppose you go for completely opposite, don't you?
You could?
Yeah. But what would you, because if people were watching The Witcher, they'd want to watch something similar, wouldn't they?
Maybe. See, this is the great thing. It's your double feature. You can program it however you like. Speaking of Blade Runner, I was talking to Jeff Cronenweth, who his dad shot it. And I asked him, he shot Being the Ricardos. And I was like, what's the other film? And he goes, Alien versus Predator.
Oh my God. I love Predator. It's a film you really love, but I love it every time. It makes me laugh. Oh my God. Oh yeah, that's a good choice. I don't know. I really don't know. That's a really difficult question to end on, isn't it? What would be your two?
Well, I haven't made a movie.
What would you? All right. What would you do with The Witcher then? What would you put with it?
Because that is the ultimate question, right? Do you do the same thing or do you do a different thing? Because it would be easy to say Game of Thrones. What would be? Let's see. I would do. Those armor. Did you ever see the Chronicles of Riddick?
Yeah. that was a breathe. That was a yeah.
So yeah, it's a movie. But I will say, I really loved the costumes and the props in that film. The Necromonger armor looks really cool. And so the armor that you made because you switched up, there's like a group of, blanking on their names, but the
Nilfgaard.
Yeah. They're like bronze setup.
Yeah. Friends at Gold. Yeah. It was so important. I did like a Gothic. It's so important to make them a stronger force than season one. And as I said with Eamon as Cahir, and they had to be believable that they would literally come and kill you. And that's why that armor was so important for them. Yeah, that was good.
So I, having the through line be the armor, I will pick Chronicles of Riddick as the as the other one.
Well, the costumes were great in that.
Yeah, I actually have his big swingy knives that he has.
Oh my God!
I emailed, so I was again teenage boy. That movie, I was like, yeah, fucking cool. I emailed the director. David Toohey, and I go, hey, how did you make those knives or whatever? And he got back to me in like 30 minutes and was yeah, he was like, they're literally X-Acto blades, like X-Acto ergo handles, and this is the knife, and there you go. I asked him about the costume. He was like, I don't know, I'm not a costume designer, but I know how he made the knives.
That's such a typical answer. When people regard costume, they're like, I don't know. But regarding props, oh, that's brilliant that he got back to
So
you.
I still have them. I made
Oh,
them when I was 15 and yeah, still own them. So David Toohey, cool guy.
that's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. That was a lot of fun, and I certainly learned a lot.
I absolutely loved it. And I probably said loads of things that will get me in trouble and people will think I did. But I don't care. I've really enjoyed it. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for asking me. And you're so interesting. Do you get interviewed yourself?
No, I have not.
Well, I think your girlfriend should interview you. Because there's a lot there that needs to be told to the world.
I think she gets enough of me talking.
Oh, yes, I'm
we
sure.
live together, so she just gets an earful of this all the time.
Lucky girl. But no, I've
Thank
loved
you.
you so much, and yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, well, congrats again, and good luck with the rest of season 3.
Well, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. Take care.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F at our Matbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.